All right, mic check, I'm good. So I'm Max Ceron, CWB Association Welding Podcast. Today we have a really cool guest, Welding Podcast.
The show is about to begin.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the CWB Association podcast. My name is Max Ceron, and as always, trying to find the best talent, skills, and stories across Canada and the world to bring to you. Today, we have a wonderful guest coming from Western Saskatchewan. We have Alisha Dalton. Alisha, how are you doing?
I am doing wonderful. How are you?
I'm a little bit sick, so for my listeners that listen all the time, they might think, wow, Max has got his husky voice on. My husky voice today is mainly, I think, because of the forest fires out here in Alberta and Saskatchewan. I have allergies, so I think that's what's bothering me. I can't quite figure it out, but it's been a few days now, so.
Yeah, I'm sure that's not helping anything. Well, actually,
No.
over here, we have a power outage right now. So we had to actually back up one of our welding trucks to the shop and had to set everything up. It was actually kind of a nightmare, but so we got it all together and it works. So we're just sitting here with no power and we're just running off the generator. So
well, at least you got a gen set to give you some power, so that's good.
yeah.
So, Alisha, where are you sitting right now? Where are you located?
I am in Kindersly, Saskatchewan, and I'm actually at work right now.
I am from Saskatchewan myself. I live in Regina. For the listeners out there, if you ever get a chance, come visit Saskatchewan. How do you like Kindersly?
It's not bad. I don't know. It depends.
Give me the selling feature. Like if you were in an elevator with me for 30 seconds and you had to sell Kindersly to me, what would you say?
Oh, the fishing is really good in some areas. I'm big into fishing. So, I mean, that's one of the biggest things, right? Ice fishing, summer fishing. So that's kind of a big selling point for me. And the hunting is pretty amazing around here too.
Good. And then if you had to say, something not so good about Kindersly.
I mean, you can watch your dog run away for 3 days. So, I mean, that's something.
Oh, that's an old joke. Some old fart taught you that one.
It's no different than anywhere else. It depends on your opinion, your outlook on life, right? If you think somewhere's it's going to be no matter where you are, right? So if you have a positive outlook, you just see the good no matter where you are, right?
I am an eternally positive person, frustratingly so. I make people around me go crazy, but that's okay.
Hey, you know what? Don't ever let that go because that is an amazing quality. 100%.
So were you born and raised in Kindersly? Is this your home stomping grounds?
No, it's not. I am actually from Ontario, Alberta. It is right by the border. So if you go northwest of Kindersly, about an hour and 40 minutes, there's a small town there. I went to school, there was 60 kids K to 12. Middle of nowhere, pretty much. Yeah. So that's where I grew up. So, I mean, I didn't fly far from the nest, but far enough. And I've been here for about 12 years or so.
And what took you out of the small town to Kindersly? Was it work or was it just life?
It was kind of just life. I just ended up moving out here for work and then kind of just ended up where I am now.
And Kindersly is a little bit of a hub of work. There's quite a few companies in that little town.
Oh, yeah. It is a big hot spot for oil field work. And that's what our company is based on, is an oil field company, right? So that's, you get a lot of transients here and there's a lot of people. It's a big town and the housing is expensive too. So yeah, it's a big money town, that's for sure. And that's why a lot of people work here. And I'd say a lot of the population here are out of towners for sure.
Yeah, and the people from Ontario are probably looking on Google right now. Cost of a house in Kindersly and being like, that's not so bad. But compared to the rest of
it's pretty wild, yeah.
Yeah, it can be pretty crazy compared to other rural Saskatchewan, right?
It is for sure, yeah.
So growing up in a small town, I know in Saskatchewan, Alberta, the prairies, there's not a lot of access to much. The small town schools don't get a lot of funding. There's usually a hockey team. There's usually not much else, maybe volleyball. And there's sometimes a trades program, sometimes not. So, in where you were growing up, did you have kind of your eyes on, working with your hands or trades or what were you like as a little girl?
Honestly, there wasn't really that many crazy options. We were kind of like one of the smaller towns. If you were to go to one of the other towns that were close by, like Concert or Provost, they had shop class and all that kind of stuff here. But we had an options class in school, but it wasn't actually options. It was just like cooking or something like that. And then when I got into high school, they offered like a mechanics course, like
Hmm.
just little credits or whatever you take to graduate and stuff like that. But there was like no in-house shop class. There was no carpentry. There was really nothing. So whatever I was getting, I was just doing through distance learning.
Okay, so when did the bug hit you? At what age, as a young person, were you like, I think I like building things or working with my hands, or was that like way off the radar and you were thinking, like most people get pressured by society to go to university or to do something?
I think I always knew that I wanted to do trades kind of work, like something to work with my
Hmm.
hands, like artistically wise too, like because I draw things, I paint, I do that kind of stuff. That was what I started out doing. I was always drawing, I was always painting, I was always finding something to do that way, right? Like I'd painted
Hmm.
murals in the walls in the library of my school for credits to graduate and stuff like that. And like my dad owned a trucking company, right? So he was always doing mechanical stuff, and I was always following around doing that stuff. And I've always been told I'm mechanically inclined, and I've always had an interest to find out how things work. I'm always interested in to know, to look at something and
Yeah,
just figure out how to fix it, right?
I think that's kind of like a way. Like, there's two types of people. There's people that want to know how things work, and there's people that don't. And
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 that
when you
just
try,
don't care, right?
yeah,
The
yeah, and
people
they
out there,
just
they
want
don't
it to
even
work.
care about it, right?
And it's interesting because you know you can't make someone who doesn't care. If
Oh
someone's not
God,
interested in how
that's so
mechanics
true.
works,
Yeah,
you can't
yeah.
make them do it. Like,
No,
I grew
for
up in a
sure.
trades family. My dad's a tradesperson. I'm a tradesperson. My daughter, I was like, oh, you should get into the trades. Oh, I mean, it was like she was like zero interest, like zero. And I tried to get her to go, but she wanted to go to university and she's doing her own thing. She's doing awesome. She actually lives in
Yeah.
Alberta now. My son didn't so much like the trades, didn't really get into it, but he doesn't like school. So then I think he's gonna end up in the trades anyways, because hey, they're good work and it's a good life. But for yourself, coming out of, you're in high school, not a lot of ability to do much shop, but you kind of have your eyes set, you said on the trades. What was the trade you were eyeing up at, like grade 11, 12? What were you thinking?
Uh,
That might
Heavy
be
duty
cool.
mechanic, heavy
Oh
duty
yeah,
mechanic
yeah.
for sure. Yeah,
And
yeah. And
that's a good
before,
gig.
yeah, before I actually moved to the Kindersly area, I did have an apprenticeship set up, and then things just didn't work out, and I
Hmm.
had to turn it down. And I was always pretty disappointed about that because I really wanted to learn. And I mean, I'm a short, little, small thing, so it would have been hard for me, I'm sure. But I was always not afraid of the challenge, and I thought it would have been interesting to learn. I've always wanted to actually be a heavy duty mechanic, like certified, and a welder too.
Well, you can do both. One of my really good friends here and part of the Regina chapter, Chase, he is a Red Seal welder and is working on his Red Seal heavy duty mechanic right now. And he loves it because he gets to be the mechanic and work on heavy
Hmm.
duty trucks, and he
Yeah,
gets to weld the trailers and weld the cabs and suspensions. So he kind of gets to do all the cool work.
yeah, you get the best of both worlds, really.
Hmm. So you said that you had an apprenticeship lined up for heavy duty mechanic. So after high school, did you take a course or did you just know someone that could get you a job? How
Um,
did that get set up?
my first job, actually, I worked at a nursing home and was a care aide for about a year. And then they kind of convinced me to take the courses on it, but I wasn't really sold. Like, it's just one of those jobs where you do it because it pays okay, but like your heart's just not in it. And
Hmm.
you want to do something different. So as soon as there was an opportunity, there was an oil field company. It's actually a picker service company. They hauled casing and tubing and all that stuff. And I started working there, and then I was kind of like, um, working in that environment, and it was more interesting to me. And then there was a mechanic that they had, like a certified mechanic,
Hmm.
and I started working with him a little bit, and then that really piqued my interest, and that's kind of what drew me to want to be heavy duty mechanic. And then I started looking into apprentices, because actually working at that company, I struggled a lot. They would not put me on the trucks. They literally told me right to my face, "We don't think you're capable of swamping on our picker trucks." um, and then they told me, "No, we won't apprentice you to be a mechanic." So then that's why no,
Wow.
they bold-faced told me, "We literally don't think that you're capable." And I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, okay, cool. I guess I'll just go
not
somewhere
work
else
here.
then. Yeah, no
Yeah,
kidding,
yeah.
right? And I mean, yeah, I was younger and probably not as strong as I am now, right? But like I had the gumption to do it. And then it's funny because when I convinced them, like, let me go out, let me prove you wrong. And obviously I did. And then I got a few raises and then people were mad and stuff like that. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
yeah.
So, you have your eyes set on heavy duty mechanic. Obviously for a young woman, especially in rural prairies, you're not going to get a lot of opportunities. You're not going to
No.
get a lot of people being like, yeah, that's an awesome gig. Go do that. Follow your dreams. In the city, it's better for women because there's a little bit more of that equal,
Yeah, for sure.
mentality. But
Yeah.
small town Saskatchewan, it can be pretty prejudiced. It can be pretty prejudiced. And as a mechanic, a heavy duty mechanic, you're having these obstacles. You moved to Kindersly kind of chasing that dream. What happened?
Well, actually, it was right before I moved to the Kindersley
Okay.
area. I turned that job down and I came here and then I started working at a maintenance company. And so they did pipeline, they did facility work and that kind of stuff. And I was hired on as a welder's helper. And that was just by chance.
Hmm.
And then I did some welding and then I kind of realized, oh, I like this more. I like this better.
Hmm.
Because I don't know, with welding, I don't know, it sounds really cheesy, but like there's more ability for you to be artistic and you to be creative, like 100% versus being a mechanic. And I think that's why it just clicked for me. And it's so satisfying, they were rolling pipe and stuff like that. And it's just something clicked for me. And I was like, this is cool. Like, this is what I want to do. I love this. And then
And
the idea of being a heavy duty mechanic just kind of went out the door, right?
So then you get on as a welder's helper. You start seeing how this plays out. Did you encounter the same level of, barriers in
Hmm.
welding as you did immediately in heavy duty mechanics? Sounds like heavy duty mechanic right off the top. They're like, nope,
Yeah,
don't care,
that's how
don't
it
want
was.
you. Welding was the same. It was like, nope. You're like, I want to be a welder. They're like, forget it, not gonna happen.
Yeah, they wouldn't apprentice me. I asked him to apprentice me, and he's like, "No." And I was like, "Oh, well, this is really getting frustrating." But I was like,
Yeah,
whatever,
yeah,
right? Like, I work circles around the boys, and it's not being conceited, but I had a point to prove, right? Because,
yep.
as I was the only girl that worked there, right? So I mean, I had to show that I was a hard worker and that I wasn't stupid and that I was committed to this, right? So
There's this weird idea in society in the trades that when women enter the trades that it's just for a bit, like you're just trying it out. And I don't get that. Like if I wanted to try anything out, I'd try out being a race car driver. I don't know, something stupid. You're not gonna get into
no,
like,
not me.
yeah, like I'm not gonna get into like a hard working, burn yourself, you
Yeah.
know,
Oh, no
12
kidding,
hours a
right?
day thing to try out. That's not a tryout type of trade.
Yeah,
I'd
it's
try
not,
out being a pastry chef where I get to get fat
right?
and eat stuff. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what it is. But there's a lot of people, there's a lot of guys that do it. You see it more often, I think, in guys. They try it out and they don't like it and then they're done with
hmm
it, right? But yeah, I don't know. I think it's that they expect more out of you to prove that you're serious, right? And it didn't take me long for them or it didn't take them long to realize that I was pretty serious about it and I wasn't just there to be the stereotypical view that they might have on a
hmm
girl in the patch. No, I was there to work. I was there to be their equal and I respected them and for the most part they respected me. So,
yeah, you're there to make bank like everybody else. Nobody likes
yeah.
being there. You're just there to make the money.
No, pretty much, yeah.
So, did you at any point here go to school? You were interested in heavy duty mechanic, but you just went and worked at a shop. You were
Mhm.
interested in welding, went and worked at a shop. At some point, did you think I should maybe go to take a program or a class or anything like that?
I don't know. I never really had an interest in taking preamp or anything like that. It was
Hmm.
just kind of one of those things where you get a little bit money hungry in the patch, where you're not thinking about school. You're just thinking about, I need to find another job. And, because it started slowing down at this company I was at. So I had
Yeah.
no choice and to go to a different company, right? And
And then
it,
what happens? Like that's the fear. It's tough when you don't have any papers or any schooling to find a new job sometimes because they're like, what experience do you have? And all you got to say is another company. That's
mhm.
always like the selling feature of school. So for yourself, leaving one job, going to another, was it tough moving to new jobs and making sure that they understood that you're here and not down here again?
It was, yeah, definitely difficult. And like, I think like, I don't want to sound like victimized or anything, but like when you go to apply for these oil field jobs, people are not like, they're kind of like we're not going to hire her, you know what I mean? Like, so I always had
Like
to
a
fight
joke.
for it.
You know.
And my references were always solid, and that's what's got me my jobs in the past is my solid references, right? Because I have a point to prove when I'm hired and I work hard, right? So
Yeah, and as you build yourself up and you get these skills, are you getting CWB tickets? Are you grabbing your pipe tickets, your 2-inch, your 6-inch, your ASME tickets? Like where are you on the skill level?
so at that point when I was done working for that maintenance company, they pretty much slowed down. Like the company actually kind of ran into the ground basically. And yeah, no, honestly, short form, that's pretty much what happened. And I started working at a vac truck company,
Hmm.
and so I did that for a little bit, and that was just, it was a decent pay or whatever, and it was something to do, and you didn't really need to be that skilled in labor, so it was pretty easy to get that job. And
Yeah.
I had known some of the people that worked there, so it sort of worked out for me. And then I started working at another like maintenance company that had welders, and that's where I started my apprenticeship. So it was kind of like it was a time where it was kind of slow around Kindersly. So I thought there's a lot of people that were jumping from job to job, just trying to find something to pay their bills, right?
Hmm.
So at that point, yeah, I started this other maintenance company, and that's where I started my apprenticeship because they had their own like detached welding shop, and that was in Robert.
And when you're talking maintenance, are you talking oil field maintenance? Are you
Yeah,
talking
oil field
mining maintenance
maintenance.
or
Yeah,
anything maintenance?
oil
Yeah.
field maintenance. Yeah, and did some pipeline and facility work and all kinds of stuff.
And how big is this company? Like how many welders are there?
Like at the time, there was probably a couple of subcontractors and 3 or 4
Hmm.
employee welders.
So there's
And
an
it,
opportunity there for you, right? Yeah.
yeah, there was. Yeah, yeah.
So is that where you're working now, or is that where you started your apprenticeship? How long were you there for?
That's where I started my apprenticeship, and I was there for probably like a year and a half about. And then my boyfriend and I had our son. And so when I was pregnant, you can't really weld. Well, I mean, I probably could, but
You can
like,
up to there's actually a
there's a,
presentation right now, but there's an article saying that it's totally fine as long as you're healthy.
yeah, but it's like you shouldn't necessarily be lifting heavy unless you're really used to it. And
Hmm.
I wasn't ready to put my kid at that kind of a risk. And
Yeah, yeah.
and as a first time mom, everything. You're scared of
Personal
everything.
choice. Yeah,
You're
be
scared to
careful.
eat everything. You're scared to look at anything. You're paranoid, right? You want to make sure that the baby's okay. So, and I mean,
Yeah.
there really isn't that much research into pregnant women welding, to be honest. So I didn't really want to take the risk. So I actually started working at another or a care home in Kindersly this time,
Hmm.
and I worked there for a bit, and I was just sad because I wasn't welding. And you know what? Honestly, I think that's where I really had this moment where I was like, wow, I want to be a welder, and this is the trade that I want to be in, because my heart was broken that I wasn't in the
Doing
welding
it. Yeah,
trade. And
yeah.
yeah, and I really wanted to do it because it was in me. That's what I wanted to do. So as soon as my mat leave was done, I was bugging my boss, well, now boss, for a job, and I kept bugging him, and he wasn't really, like, he didn't want to hire anybody at that point, but I just bugged him enough
Hmm.
where he hired me. And I think he finally got to a point where, wow, she's contacted me enough, she must want this job really freaking bad. And then he hired me, and yeah, I'll never forget the day that he hired me, because he called one of my references from this previous maintenance company I was working at in Robert, and he said, oh, I'd hire her back in a heartbeat. And in that moment, I knew that I had the job, and it was
Hmm.
just a pretty surreal feeling.
So here you are, baby, new life, Kindersley, and you finally get back in at the job where they're gonna apprentice you and run you through your levels. What's the game plan for you at this point? Are you thinking I'm gonna get my red seal and put a cap on this, or are you thinking I'm just gonna keep my tickets up and just make as much money as I can, or what's the plan?
Yeah, I definitely wanted to finish my apprenticeship and get all that done. And the moment I started, like, they knew I was an apprentice. They always bug you, like, "Oh, we're gonna get you welding pipe, we're gonna get your B, and all that kind of stuff," right? So, I mean,
Hmm.
that was my intention too. And actually, at the very beginning, I really didn't have an interest in getting my pressure ticket, because I was like, "Well, I don't want to weld pipe all day."
Yeah.
And you know what? It's funny that I thought that way because I don't anymore. I was like, well, that looks lame, just welding in circles all day, you know?
Yeah.
And then you get into it and you start welding pipe and then you realize it could be pretty fun, right? And it's just another thing to add. You know, I kind of looked at it with a bad attitude in the beginning, but you know, it's just another skill you have, a really good skill to have, and
Mm-hmm.
it's a great skill to have, a great ticket to have. It gets, you know, opens up the horizon for all kinds of job opportunities, you know. And
Yeah.
people kind of look at you in a different way. Like I had somebody actually, it's funny, this happened recently. One of my mom friends, her husband is like a safety guy, and he asked me, he's like, "Oh, so you're a welder?" And I was like, "Yeah, yeah." He's
Yeah.
like, "Oh, you just do structural?" I was like, "No, I'm like certified B pressure." And he's like, "Oh," and his attitude just instantly changed. And I was like, "Wow, there really is hysteria there for sure."
Yeah, there is a stereotype. I don't buy
Yeah.
into it. I don't like buying into it. I've been a pressure welder and a structural welder. Um, I think there's skill on both sides. I'm
Oh,
never gonna
100%.
play that
100%. Yeah.
game. But I think from society's point of view, they're like, oh yeah, you weld pipe. Oh yeah. Um,
Yeah, it's weird. I don't even know
it is
where
a
that
little
even
bit of a weird
stems
thing.
from. I have no idea where it even
I
comes
think it's
from.
money. I think it's money, honestly.
Yeah,
I
because
think
they're
people are
thinking, oh,
like,
like,
oh,
oh, and they're like,
oil guys make way more
yeah.
money or whatever.
But you know, it's just like all these guys on big pipeline jobs. Well, it's ironically to weld line pipe, you don't actually even need to have your B pressure, which is the hilarious part of it. Most of the time, you know, you're going to do facility work after, so you need to be certified, right, and have your B pressure.
Hmm.
But like to weld line pipe, you don't actually have to have your B pressure, which is funny. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's just because they think the big boys are working on the pipelines, and then you're just automatically worth more money. But I'm sure there's probably a few structural welders that are making a lot more. But
Oh yeah, no, there's I just heard of a job opening up in northern BC where JP Red Seal with structural opposition stick and flux core. It's I think it was $108 an hour to start.
wow.
Ooh.
Oh my God,
I was like, I'm
$108
coming
an
out of
hour.
retirement. I'm heading up
All
there.
right, done with the
Yeah.
podcast. Moving on up.
Yeah. And they told me about this gig. They're like, yeah, I should be starting up in about 6 months. And I was like, boots on, I'm out the door, man. $100 an hour. Woo, I'm over there. And they're
Right?
like, yeah, and everything after 80's double time. And I was like, oh,
Oh my God, can you
but
imagine?
but I mean, it's a good time to be a welder in Canada, man. Like I'm serious. There's lots of if you're willing to go work. I mean, that's what I always tell the young kids.
Yes, you gotta make
If you're willing,
sacrifices.
yeah, if you're willing to make the sacrifice to go live in the middle of nowhere and share a trailer with a bunch of smelly, gross people and live do that life, and yeah, you're gonna
Yeah,
make 40K in a month. You
yeah,
can. It's totally
and
doable.
you can, but you know what? That doesn't come with sacrifices, right? Being away
No,
from your family, and for me,
that's
that's
right.
just not ideal.
Me too. I decided long ago that I'm just going to try to ride the shop game as high as I could because I like
Yeah,
being home and I did the field work. I did that. I chased the money for a while. And even up until my 40s, I still would pick up a shutdown here and there. Like, hey, why not? If I got a
yeah,
few weeks off, go pick up a shutdown, make 15K over 2.5 weeks. I mean, who wants to say no to that, right?
nobody.
But
Yeah,
nobody, right? And it's usually pretty easy work at the potash mines. But you get to a point where you're like, no, I'm done. Like, if they make fun of like pipe well, I see especially friends that go down to like the US of mine, they're making $300,000 and they're like, yeah, all this money. I was like, yeah, that's crazy cash. But if you can't be happy off 100K, maybe it's time to look at your life and how you spend your
yeah,
money because that's a lot. Like
yeah,
the
and the time
average
that you're
wage,
sacrificing. Yeah,
that's right. That's right. And if the average Canadian in Canada makes like 65 or 66,000, that's including rich and poor. So if you're over that, you're making more than like 80% of the population. And it's like, if reevaluate your lifestyle, maybe is a good place to start. See
yeah.
what's
Like, I
up.
mean, you know, it's great. You made all this money, but you look back and you didn't spend any time with your family, and you
Hmm.
didn't do anything fun, and your kids grew up without you, and that's
That,
sad.
yeah,
That
it is
is
sad. I went
that's
through
sad.
that. I lost a business. I lost a wife. I got divorced. I made a pile of money. I don't have any of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's all
Yeah.
gone. Doesn't matter. Like, I
Isn't that
mean,
funny how that works out, eh? You
yeah,
look
yeah,
back
it's
at
all
all the
good.
money you made, and you're like, wow, what do I have?
Yeah, like 26-year-old Max making 100K. Well, good for you. Now where is it?
Yeah.
Like nothing, right?
Yeah.
So like, I mean, you learn those lessons, and then you pick lifestyle. That's why I keep saying pick a lifestyle. Live to your lifestyle, work to your lifestyle, and don't let anyone drag you down. If you're happy pulling the trigger on a MIG for, $28 an hour for a manufacturing company, but you're home every day at 3:30 and every weekend's off,
Mhm.
bro, Good for you. There's nothing wrong with that. That's a happy life.
Yeah, and that's I have a good setup now, right? I usually work 8 to 4. Sometimes I have to work late, but I can leave, most of the time, anytime I want, really,
Hmm.
within reason to take my kid to appointments and, play sports. And my boss makes it super easy for me to be a mom. And
Yeah.
obviously, first and foremost, that's my priority is to be a good mom. And he makes it so easy for me to, take off whenever I want. I like just yesterday I took off half an hour earlier, whatever. I was done at 3:30 and I took my kid to a ball game, right? So I
Yeah.
mean, I'm really fortunate for that. And if I was doing camp work or anything that it just wouldn't be possible. Like I just can't imagine a lifestyle where I'm not coming home to my boyfriend and my son because that is just so important to me.
Hmm. I remember being like in a camp and thinking about my kids. So I was off site. I was off on a site working 2 weeks after my second kid was born. And I'm like lying in a bed thinking about my baby that I held for a week before I had to
Yeah.
leave, and just being like, oh, I am done with this. Like, I am so done with this.
Yeah. And that
Like,
just
makes you sad just thinking about it now. It's like,
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Yeah, that was definitely the hardest part for me was going to work. Yeah, I was
right.
the first day that I took my kid to daycare, like when I was my
Hmm.
first day off of mat leave when I started at Dennis's Welding here. And that was a rough day for me. There was like my question my whole entire existence for weeks. For weeks. And I still do every day. It is an internal battle. But,
Hmm.
ultimately my kid comes first, but
Yeah.
also, desiring to have a career, right? You want to have both, but it is so hard to have both. But
Well,
you just can't quit. You can't give up.
no, and you are being a role model. You like, your kids watching you work is how they learn to work. You can
Mhm.
yell at someone to work all day long, but they're never going
Mhm.
to learn until they see it happen. So,
Yeah.
your kids watching you get up and go and come home and the whatever trips you take or how you choose to spend your money with your family, they'll understand. I mean, they'll get it, right? I think a lot of the kids that don't see their parents work hard don't understand what hard work is.
100%. Yeah, my kid even says to me, he goes back and forth. Sometimes he wants to go to work with dad, and sometimes wants to go to work with mom. And the other day, he just told me, he's like, "Mom, I think I want to come work with you. I think I want to be a welder."
Good.
Yeah.
All right.
And
Well,
I mean, if he wants to, great. But yeah.
yeah, let's take a break now. We're at a good spot. And when we get back from the commercials, we'll talk about Dennis's Welding, what you do, and what your work life looks like in terms of every day and the projects you work on. Sound good?
Sounds good.
All right. We'll be right back here on the CWB Association podcast with Alicia. Don't go anywhere and stay tuned.
The CWB Association is new and improved and focused on you. We offer a free membership with lots of benefits to anyone interested in joining an association that is passionate about welding. We are committed to educating, informing, and connecting our workforce. Gain access to your free digital publication of the Weld magazine, free online training, conferences, and lots of giveaways. Reach out to your local CWB Association chapter today to connect with other welding professionals and share welding as a trade in your community. Build your career, stay informed, and support the Canadian welding industry. Join today and learn more at cwbassociation.org.
And we are back here on the CWB Association podcast. My name is Max Ceron. I'm here with Alisha Dalton, who's coming to us from Kindersly, Saskatchewan. She is now working for Dennis Welding. Dennis's or Dennis Welding?
Dennis with apostrophe. Welding. Yeah.
Denny.
There's always everybody says Dennis is with like an extra S on the end, and I don't know, whatever you want to call it. It's the word Dennis apostrophe and then welding. That's what it is. But everybody just says Dennis is with an extra S on the end. So
All right. All right. I'll trust you on that one.
we'll
I don't
call
know
it what
enough
we're
about
calling it.
English. Yeah.
Yeah, well, we're welders, aren't we? Right?
Yeah. So, once you got there, you're working away. You have your kid. When did you get your red seal? Did you go challenge it? Did you do an upgrader program or
Oh,
did you just write the test? What'd you do?
there was no challenging. No, I went to school for my second year,
Okay.
and yeah, and then in 2019 I got my journeyman. Yeah, and
Okay.
that was definitely the highlight. It was incredible.
How hard was it for you?
Oh my God. I have the worst nerves in the entire world. Like for the practical, like I was just, I did my up hand with 60-10 and I just blew a big hole. And I never even done that like once in the whole training. And then I went like, cause you can ask the teachers for
Yeah.
advice or whatever. And buddy comes to look at it and he's like, just fill it up and go, grind it
Yeah,
up. It'll
yeah,
be
you'll
fine.
be
And I'm like,
fine.
oh, okay. Yeah. And like, I don't know. I was just totally in my head that day. I thought that I messed it up so bad. Like I was so worried about it. And I'll never forget, we were all sitting in the one classroom just off, like there's a couple of classrooms right off the shop. And we were all sitting in there and they'd call us out one at a time to tell us if we passed or not, like
Mhm.
our practical. And I walked out and I just had my head hung so low. And this one older guy looks at me, he's like, "Why are you hanging your head?" And just holds his hand out to shake my hand. And I was just like, it was just surreal because
Just
I
like,
totally thought that
yippee.
I botched it. And you know what?
Yeah.
Whatever. If I had a failed, like it wouldn't have been the end of the world, but I just cared so much about passing and so much about it that it was like everything to me in that moment that I passed. Like it was just a dream, right? And
So
then
where did you go for your level 3?
I went to Sask Poly in
But
Saskatoon.
in Saskatoon? Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So who was your instructor?
He would have been oh my God, I'm totally just blanking on names right now.
Trying to think. 2019 Poly Saskatoon.
No, I know his name, but I'm just totally having a moment.
Was it Gary? Was it Scott?
It was Scott. Sorry,
Scott
Craig? Yeah, Scott Craig. You know what? Thank God that you know what you're talking about right now, because I totally just like, it's like when you asked me where I was from, and for a minute there, I totally forgot that I lived in Kindersly in the beginning of the interview. No, yes, it was Scott. And actually, there's 1, 2, 3 guys here that have worked at Dennis's that actually were taught by him too, and he's actually an amazing teacher. He has some pretty.
He's a weird dude. He's a weird dude. I love him to death.
Okay,
He's
you're
fun to
gonna
hang-
say it like he's a strange dude, but like,
Yeah,
damn, he's a good teacher. He's
he
such a
is.
good teacher.
I just saw him last week. I was up in Saskatoon. I went and visited him. I like him. I was supposed to meet him for beers actually, because he just finished a class of level 3s, and he went 12 for 12 pass on his class, which is that's not easy to do. I
No,
taught
it's
level
certainly not.
3. I taught level 3 for years, and the upgrader challenge course. I'd be very happy. Anything 8 out of 12 is a win. Anything 8 over that, you're like knocked it out of the park. And when I was there, he got 12 for 12, and I was like, Scott, you're the boss, man. Like that's amazing. And I was supposed to meet them for drinks, but then got caught up with some other stupid meetings. I would have rather had drinks with the young people that just graduated, because that's just such a happy vibe. Everyone just passes their practical and everyone gets so excited, but then they gotta like keep it cool because tomorrow, the next day,
Yeah,
they gotta
is
go write the written.
you know what? It's funny because most people get so stressed out over the IP exam, but for me, I'm like, this is great. I'm so looking forward to the IP exam because I'm a total book nerd, right? Like, but when I was in school, I had my kid with me the whole time, right?
Mhm.
And I studied like 3 or 4 hours every night.
Yeah.
And then the other people in my class told me that I was a teacher's pet, apparently, is what they used to say all the time, because they would always be messing. Like in the 3rd year, there was a group of them, they were always messing like with each other's amperage and changing stuff like that, right? And they thought it was hilarious. And then Scott kind of knuckled down and was like, "Okay, like this is funny, you guys, but like this is it. Like this is your last stage of school. You got to smarten up." And
Mhm. And how'd you do on your IP overall?
I got 92% on it, so I mean that's not bad. And then I won
That's
an
pretty
award with
good.
it as well too. So there
Highest
was
in the province, or what was it?
it's kind of a gray area award. I looked into it a few times when I got it, but it doesn't actually specifically say. But like when you get the award, it sends you the paper and it says that it's the highest mark in a predominantly male trade, is what was
Okay,
said.
so it was
Yeah.
from some type of like a women foundation or
Yeah, like
program or something. Yeah.
something, yeah, some like women's rights incentives and that kind of stuff. And
Well, that's
yeah.
awesome, man. Congrats.
yeah,
Did
it
you
was
get some?
kind of cool.
Did you get some cash?
Actually, they gave me $400 for it, but you know, usually they
Oh,
don't, because they usually
that's
have like
awesome.
they usually have a big award ceremony, and they couldn't, so they were like, well, you know, let's butter them up and give them cash instead because we can't like celebrate them. I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
that's cool, I'll take that.
Yeah, they didn't have awards. Like, I mean, I challenged. So I challenged my red seal, which I don't advise anyone to do because that's really hard. Like,
And did you get it?
Yeah, I got it. I got a
Okay, that's cool. I
93
can
or a
respect that.
94, but I'm a super nerd and I had already welded 10 years. So like I had been around the block and I had been welding forever. And then finally someone's like, I was like trying to apply for like a supervisor role. And they're like, we're not really going to give a supervisor role to anybody that doesn't have their red seal. And I was like, oh, kind of like thought I could skip through my whole life without taking any school. And it's like, no, I guess I can't. So I went and they had a 7-week upgrader program, which basically was like the crash course on how to be a welder in 7 weeks. And I just ran through that, challenged the IP, and got a really, really good mark. And that's actually how me getting such a good mark on my IP challenging was how I got noticed to ending up being a teacher years later. Because someone like one of the instructors remembered me, was like, "You're that guy that came out of nowhere with no schooling and like shot a 93." I was like, "Yeah, that was me." They're like, "You want to teach?" I was like,
That is impressive. And you know
maybe.
what? You know what's impressive about that is that, they there's a lot of questions on there that are super basic that you learn in your first and your second year. They teach you everything you need to know to pass that exam. But there's
Mhm.
a lot of questions on there that are just generic that you only know because of experience.
Yeah.
Like, there's questions about PME on there and just random things that you would take from taking other courses or just being in the industry, right?
That's how I just looked at every question like it was work. Like, I mean, I'm at work, this question's in front of me, I got to answer it. It's in my head somewhere. I've been doing this a long time, and it's in that stupid noodle of mine. Hopefully I didn't kill it with drugs and alcohol, but I found it at the right time, at that moment when I needed it. It all came back to me, so it was good. It was good.
Yeah, no, that's pretty impressive.
So now you got your red seal, right? You're legit. What was next on the list? Like usually people that are ambitious enough to get their journey person are already thinking, what's the next on my list? Like for me, it was becoming a supervisor. I wanted to get off the floor and start moving up into like the ranks. That was my motivation to start getting my certifications. What was it for you?
At that point, it was kind of like, okay, I got my red seal, time to get my pressure ticket,
Okay.
and some other structural tickets as well too.
Hmm.
So it's kind of like I'm going to get as many tickets as I can, and my boss is really all for it. He's always want people to get better. He's always want people to improve, and he's always wanting us to be as highly skilled as we possibly can.
So what was the first round of tickets? Like your structural, so your 7018s, your flux cores, your MIGs, those are all the easy
I
ones.
think that I had my flat and horizontal 7018 before I got my journeyman. And then after that, it was my all position and then flux core, metal core, flat
Hmm.
horizontal.
You didn't get the 4-position flux core? No.
No, no, I think my boss is the only one here who has that. It's just the certain processes that we use, it wasn't really applicable for us all to get it.
Yeah.
So it was more like just my boss got it and the rest of us, we try to steer away from flux core just because, there's not as much deposition and you can't weld as fast. And there's more cleanup, right, with metal
And
core.
it's expensive too. Wire's expensive.
Oh,
So
100. It's like, I think it's probably $300 more for spools of wires. So, I mean, yeah.
yeah. So you get your structurals that you want. Did you chase any of the stainless tickets or Inconels
Yeah.
or yeah?
Yeah, I got my stainless pressure ticket as well. So yeah, I can't do position welds, but I can do roll welds like with the
What one
STT
G's? Yeah.
route.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like that was my shtick. I was always a stainless welder. I loved welding stainless, MIG stick, flux core. I didn't care. Just throw it in front of me. I'd rock it out. It was like my baby forever.
It is
And
quite
I,
satisfying.
yeah, but I feel like when I was a welder doing stainless full time 20 years ago, it was all like no masks, no ventilation, and a pile of
Oh
like this
yeah,
funny
that's rough.
smelling smoke. And like I remember the smell of stainless, and I remember coming home and like being like covered in stainless dust and in my ears and my nose and being like whatever. And then I remember I had this weird thing, and this is probably maybe I'm just crazy because no doctor could verify this, but I swear I was like had like stainless like little slivers coming out of like my skin. I'd get like a rash and I'd scratch it, and like these little pieces of steel would like fall out of my skin. And I asked the doctor once, he's like, well, stainless doesn't get absorbed. Your body probably, you breathe it in, it's just trying to probably push it out. And I was like, that can't be good for me. Fast forward 20 years now, it's like, don't breathe stainless, hexavalent chromium 8, you will die.
Yeah,
If you
pretty
breathe
much. Yeah.
stainless, you will die. And I just keep thinking of like 20 years with my head in the cloud of stainless smoke, being like,
Hmm.
I'm screwed. Like, I don't know what I did to my body. I hope I've healed. I hope that whatever needs to come out has come out, but I can't imagine 20 years of welding stainless was good for me.
Well, you can count on one thing: if it's in your body, it's not rusting. So I mean, so I mean, it's there.
I just like every alarm in the world. Whoop, 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 whoop.
Yeah, yeah, no, and I love welding stainless. It's really satisfying. It looks cool,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, it
But
is. And it just lays in there so pretty
it's
and
so perfect. And like the way that you can start another beat after the other one, and you can't even, they just perfectly blend together. You can't get that
mhm.
on 7018, and it's
Well,
really
I don't know about that, but
well, you can, but it's a lot easier with stainless. So you
it's a
just
lot easier with stainless, yeah.
yeah, and it looks cool. Yeah, it's an entirely different thing. Like you think it's not different. I was just showing one of the apprentices how to weld stainless, and I let them do a little stick welding. They're like, "Wow, this isn't even at all close to 7018." I said, "No,
No.
it's a totally different ball game." But
And once you figure it out, it's beautiful. But when you do it wrong bad. Like it's
oh
like
yeah,
if
it's
you
really
screw up
easy to trap
stainless,
slag in there.
that's right. You got slag going to freaking yesterday inside of that thing. It's
Oh
amazing. It's
god,
like a one.
terrible.
It's like a quarter-inch weld, but then you get an inch of slag in there. Like,
Hmm.
how did that even happen? Like,
Yeah. Yeah, we were the first after us three. There was three of us that just got our tickets a couple of years ago. Because well, actually a couple of years ago, because it expires. Actually today it expires. We got to get
oh,
them. We got to get them redone right away. We've been so busy. It's just one of those things, and we haven't done. We don't have a lot of stainless coming up, but we need to renew that in a week or so. And yeah, so the boys and I were working on this job, had a few headers to build, and X-ray came in and was like, "Oh, there's a lot of repairs," and we were all like, our hearts just dropped, right? Like, getting repair isn't that big of a deal when X-ray does call them, but you just feel like, right? You feel
yeah.
embarrassed when it happens, and it was all slag inclusion. And so what was happening is we were sitting we kind of had a bad rod angle, right? And then the slag would drip down and then you weld it into the pipe. And
Yeah.
we were all welding it like it was 7018 because like, well, we don't have a clue. We're all new to it. And then eventually we all kind of worked our way out of it. But it was a little bit scary and overwhelming at first. We all kind of felt like crap. We did a little mope walk for a couple of days until we figured out what was wrong. And it went on for a little while, like a couple of days. It kept calling
Getting the
repairs.
temperatures and the angles is
Yeah.
everything.
Oh, the angles are
And then learning to use the toys on the machines, man. That arc force is a savior for stainless. Not too many people know that trick. You turn up your arc force a little bit, it blows the slag back a little bit, pushes it off the puddle.
yeah, actually, no one's ever told me that before. So
A lot of people don't
I'm
play with
making
that arc
notes.
force. Yeah, that arc force knob. It's there for a reason, man. Use it.
Yeah.
So in the pipe, your pipe where you work now, is there lots of pressure work that still comes through, or do you keep up your 2-inch or like a max deposit? Like what do you maintain
Yeah.
for a cert for yourself?
We just did renewal. Yeah, we just got our 2-inch. We don't have the small bore or whatever, so
Mm-hmm.
you can only do your max deposition or whatever, like of 3/16 to 60/10. And
Yeah,
then,
okay. So that's a Sked
yeah.
40, Sked 80, Sked 40.
Yeah.
Yeah. And have you ever failed that one?
When I went for my initial, yes.
That was not an easy one. I feel
Or
like
no,
once you
sorry, it
get
was my
it, you get
6-inch initial. Sorry, my
Yeah.
6-inch initial I failed, and then I went back to do my 6-inch again, and I passed. And then my 2-inch one, I had it open up a little bit. He probably could have failed me if he wanted to, but like it was so borderline. Like he could
Just
cover
buff
it
it
up
out.
with a welding rod. Yeah, buff it out. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I remember the first time I went for pressure. So I find pipe in some ways easier. The material in pipe is a better quality steel. Like when you do CWB plates, it's usually just like A36 or 44W. It's like okay steel, but pipe steel is better quality. I find that it wets nicer, it rolls nicer, it kind of just feels like better quality materials. And the like just laying once you get that vibe of the 6010 just like going
yeah.
in, you just feel so good. You're like, oh, just ride that little button. I mean, until you blow a hole and then you feel like an idiot, but you
Oh
can
yeah, I think that
grind.
happens to everybody on
Yeah,
on their
but you can
initial test.
grind. Thank God you can
Yeah.
grind on a pipe test. You can't grind on CWB 18. So like, if you do blow out, just stop, feather it out, think about it. Don't start messing with your machine too much because that's first mistake. Everyone's like, oh, I blew through. I better turn it down 20 amps. Don't do that, dummy. Just let it cool down and start over. You'll be good. Like,
Yeah, that's the frustrating part about CWB tests is that you can't buff or grind anything.
yeah.
I don't know, that doesn't really make much sense to me, but you know what? It tests your skill, right? Like if you're not good enough to weld something without touching it with that buffer and a grinder, should you be a welder? Maybe not, right? And I can get it from that perspective, right? But it is nice that you can actually use the buffer and a grinder when you're using or you can use just the grinder on your pipe tests.
So I worked with this old guy, Gord Gent. He's still alive, but he's old now. He was a believer in running all, and this guy is like considered one of like the best pipe welders in Saskatchewan, like in the 40s, 50s. He showed me multiple times how to do a full 2-inch to 6-inch weld. Like there was these 4-inch hybrid welds that were around for a while in the like 70s and 80s, and he would like talk about them, but no grinding, no buffing, no feathering, no nothing.
No files.
No files, no nothing. Just him and a box of 6010s and a box of 7018s and get her done. And it was like literally he would just like tack it up, get his gaps, put it in place, and whoop. And he would just pile it through just with rod angle and control of his electrode. And I've never forgotten that because I don't believe that's necessarily smart. It's good to know when to grind, when to feather,
Yeah,
all
for
these
sure, yeah.
all the tricks, right? But he showed me that at the end of the day, if you know what you're doing well enough, you can pull it off. You can definitely. I remember him getting porosity in his root, and I was like, "Yeah, what are you gonna do now, Gord?" He's like, "Well, I'm just gonna crank your 6010 up to 180," and I was like, "What?" Like it was just madness, right?
Yeah, those are the guys that you want to learn from.
Yeah, I know
The
he was
the
a good teacher.
the guy that I learned from originally, my first welding job that I told you about, he was actually like in his 60s, right? And he'd been pipelining, and I've never seen anybody weld like that again. Like the way he'd bead, like man, it was beautiful. Like he was so skilled. Like you barely even need to touch it with a grinder. Like
Yeah.
yeah, it was pretty impressive, honestly. And those guys are the people you want to learn from for sure.
So now, what's the daily life look like for you? You know, like I read on your bio that you're foreman now. So that starts to pull you a little bit off the tools, or are you on the
It
tools
sure
still all day
does.
long?
It sure does. Yeah, I'm more in the bureaucratic side of things. Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, I usually get here and I probably spend an hour or more just kind of delegating and going through jobs with guys and getting them going for the day and
Hmm.
getting them figured out. And, I don't do as much welding like near as much as I used to. Like I keep up with all my certifications and my continuity, right? Occasionally I just weld a little bit of pipe the other day for a small job that was emergency, but I don't honestly do that much welding. Like if it's something that needs to be real attention to detail and needs to be like perfect, my boss always wants me to do that.
Hmm.
Yeah, because I have a real eye for detail that way. So I mean, I do a bit of welding. I mean, not as much as I want to, but
Did you go to school for any type of supervisory training or anything?
nope, not at all. No,
No,
just kind of
learning
BSing
on the
my way
fly.
through it. Yeah, pretty much. I'm just kind of picking it up as I go, right? And it's working
And-
for me, so
yeah, no, it's good. Now, what's the future then? Like what's your game plan? Like you're moving into the office now, you're getting into this delegation role. I mean, sounds like you got a great company, but companies that are smaller generally don't have a lot of vertical movement, let's say. Like do you see yourself working here for the next 20 years, 30 years, or taking it over someday? Or, like what's kind of like the dream? What's Alicia's dreams?
I mean, I kind of want to get better at what I'm doing right now, right? And I think what I'm working towards right now is pretty much me and another coworker that just got promoted to work together so that my boss isn't working all the time and he can go on vacations and do whatever, right? Like that's kind of our
Hmm.
goal at the moment. But long-term goals, I don't. I'm kind of focusing on the now, right?
Yeah.
That's more my priority. But I mean, I don't want to be here for another like 30 years, right? I want to retire early and just kind of enjoy my life and make money while I can now and, retire and eventually go up north and live in the
Well,
bush.
30 years for you is retiring early. That puts you like what, like 56? That's still an early retirement. How old are you?
I'm 30.
Yeah, so 60. Yeah, I mean that's normal.
Well, I hope I'm like 50, maybe like before I'm 50.
Holy, you're gonna have to go back on the oil patch.
I know I'm ambitious.
You're gonna be working up at LNG or wherever that
Yeah,
camp was they told
maybe.
me about. Yeah. See you
Yeah.
later.
Yeah, no, with the way inflation is going, no, it's not looking so good. But yeah, I mean, the idea would be to be sitting in more of an upper management position like Grant is, and
Mhm.
I'm not sure about investing or any of that kind of stuff in the company, but we'll kind of see where it goes.
Good, good. And then what about in terms of like welding stuff? Do you envision yourself trying to maybe do a little bit of a side hustle with like you're kind of off the tools? This is what happens when you become management. It happened to me. You get off the tools and then you're kind of more of in a supervisor job, but then you miss welding, so then you just kind of start welding for yourself on the side at home, and then you start like the side hustle, which like 99% of welders do.
Yeah.
So, is that in the cards there? Do you think about that? You said you were
Oh, my
artistic.
boyfriend keeps me entertained with lots of projects. He's always like, "Hey, can you go to the shop and weld this for me or whatever?" Like, so I mean, we always have little projects. We're always like, modifying our boat or doing little projects, right? So we keep ourselves entertained that way. But yeah, I know there's been times where I've actually wanted to fix something for a friend or whatever, and I'll just ask my boss, and he's like, "Yeah, just go to the shop and fix it or whatever," and I just use his stuff. But like right now, I have a garage, but it's more like a shed than a garage, and it has a plywood floor. So I mean, it's not like
Mhm.
ideal for welding. So if I do want to weld, I got to do it when it's like not a windy day.
And you don't
So
want
I
to
mean,
start
the
anything
idea
on
is to
fire.
the idea is to buy a house in the future, and then I'll probably have more time to do little side projects and stuff like that. But it'll mostly like kind of be, my boyfriend and I want to build a jet boat too. We always talked
Ooh,
about
that's
that.
fun.
Yeah, yeah, like order one of those like pre-laser cut packages and weld it up. So
Hmm.
I mean that would be in the cards too, but you kind of got to have a bigger space for that. So right now is not ideal, but yeah, no, it's not so much doing the side hustle for other people. It's kind of like we're always trying to do projects for ourselves and
Yeah, that's fun. That's fun. And what about the, how do I put this? A lot of women that I interview that are doing very well in the trades, like yourselves, look to try to be an advocate for other women or other girls and try to be involved in the welding community to try to like support, the next crop of female welders. Do you have any desire? Yeah, well, and that's, I mean, I was a teacher
yeah.
for 8 years. It's always the next
Hmm.
crop, right? So,
Yep.
and do you have any interest in any of that, of being more, community involved or involved with like supporting the industry from a female point? Because it sounds like you had some pretty hard pushback, and I'd imagine you probably don't want to treat women that come to your shop applying for jobs like
Oh
that,
God,
right?
and I wouldn't. But you know what? It's hard because we never. I'm always like, harassing my boss, like try and look for some female welders, but nobody ever applies, right? And I mean, if
Mm-hmm.
I don't really have any opportunities to be an advocate, and time is kind of an issue for me, right? So I don't really
Yeah.
have time. Like you do more online stuff and support that way, but I just don't really have the time until
Mm-hmm.
the lady we have now doing PR stuff kind of looked into it and pretty much did all the work for me, right? So she's the backbone of this whole operation. So props to her.
Is that Jen person I was talking to?
Yeah, 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 Jen.
All right. And like, I mean, you're only 30. You got lots of time to make decisions. It's not like you're in a rush or anything.
No, no. But I
Although I
imagine,
guess I guess if you want to retire at 40, you gotta really get your really get the
hey, let's
wheels
up
on though.
55. Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, but if I had more opportunities, you're probably right. I probably really should be more of an advocate, right? Because I mean, there's a lot of girls that just don't think they can hack it. And I always have this conversation with girls like, "Oh, like what do you do?" And I say what I do and they're like, "Oh, I wish I could." Well, like why can't you? And they're like, "Well, I this and that." And I'm like, "Okay, yeah, but why not?" And then the
Yeah.
excuses always kind of run out, right? So there's never really a good reason. They always kind of run out of reasons. Just more of a confidence thing, right?
Hmm. It is, and fear of retribution that people are gonna laugh at you, your own parents, your
Oh yeah,
family,
vulnerable, so
people.
vulnerable.
Yeah, people are gonna put you down because you made this. I want to go be a welder. People are like, why? Meanwhile,
Yeah,
if Billy Bob comes home, I
yeah,
want to be a welder. Everyone's like, yay, Billy Bob's gonna get a
yeah.
job.
Good
Like,
for you, man. Like you give her, but like, yeah, you don't get that same reaction with women sometimes. But I think that it's more commendable, right? Like I've gone to the grocery store before wearing like, high vis and FR
Hmm.
stuff. And like they feel like random old guys that'll like stop me in the store and be like, what do you do when you wear all that? And then I explain to them what my career is, and they're like, oh wow, like good for you. So I mean, you get nothing but support. And honestly, I've
Hmm.
really never had anybody challenge me where I'm at now. You just have to be confident and you have to put out that vibe that you mean business and that you're going to be professional all the time. And usually you're going to get a good response. Like I've never had anybody really tell me that I can't do anything at the current job I'm at, right? Because by the time I got here, I was more skilled in my labor and I grew my confidence, and it's all about, the persona that you put out, right? And you have to be confident and you have to have a backbone, and you can't be, and I mean, yeah, I mean, we're girls, we're a little more sensitive, right? But you really got to let stuff roll off your back, because you got to have a little bit of a tougher skin, right? You got to be able to take criticism in any job you're at, right? Or you're never going to get any better.
Yeah, and I gotta say though, I don't know if girls have softer skin than boys after being a teacher for 8 years.
Yeah.
I saw a lot of guys cry in their booths quietly by themselves. I mean, frustration is frustration, and I'm not even dissing that. That's not even a diss. You gotta cry, man. Like, I mean, school
Yeah,
can be
get it out.
hard. Get it out. Like, I mean, it doesn't feel good to work on something for 8 hours and have it break in half. Nobody likes that
Oh
feeling.
God, no. Yeah, that is true. But I think it's more of like, I got
Hmm.
frustrating days at work or whatever when I want to cry. And I'm like, you can absolutely not cry at this workplace, Alicia. You know what I mean? Right? So
There's
there's
no
more of
cry.
there's more of an effort to like not do it, I guess, when you're a girl. But yeah.
All right. Well, this has been a great interview. I was going to ask you, what piece of advice do you have for like other young women coming up in the trades, but you just basically laid it all out there. Like those are all the pieces. Like be confident, try to maintain your backbone, look for support. What else is what have I missed? What can a
I mean,
young
don't wait for an opportunity to happen. You have to literally make one. You have to make it happen. You cannot wait for somebody to recruit you or somebody to push you to do it. You just have to be like, I want this. I'm going to show up and I'm going to prove to people that I'm not messing around and that I mean business and that I want to work hard and I want to be an equal, right? You have to go in
Mhm.
there with that mentality, and you can't wait for the right opportunity, right? Like I wanted this job at Dennis's and I bugged Grant until he hired me, and that's just how it went, right? Like I wanted it and I made it happen.
Yeah.
And
Uh,
you can't be scared to feel vulnerable. The hardest part always is going to be the first day showing up. And the moment that you show up, you've already earned respect from everybody around you just for walking through that door.
Yeah, it's not easy for anybody. Any dude
No.
that tells you it's easy, it's not easy. Like, I mean, it doesn't matter. You're new on the job. You don't know the skills. You might be good at what you do, but you don't know what that shop does specifically. There's
No,
gonna
no.
there's gonna be a learning curve. There's gonna be people at work that are awesome. There's gonna be people at work that are terrible. Like, I mean, it is what it is. You gotta figure it out, right?
Yeah.
So, to wrap up the interview then, what would be some of the shout outs? Who do you want to say thank you to out there in the world that has been good at supporting you to where you are?
Oh, 100% would be my boyfriend for sure. Like he's been a
Hmm.
big supporter of me, like a big time. He's been there for me whenever I needed to. Like when I went to school for my second year, he had our son the whole time, and he's always doing whatever he can to support me. And he believes in me, and he's kind of my cheerleader. So,
Are you on
and
Instagram or any of the social medias that people can follow you on,
I have Instagram, yeah.
but not one you want to share?
No, no, not really. No.
Okay, that's fine. I
No,
have
I
the
don't want to be a
Instagram.
celebrity. Yeah, I'm kind of a private person, and yeah, yeah,
Yeah, no,
and
that's
also,
fair.
yeah, really a shout out to my boss too, because honestly, without him, like I certainly wouldn't be in this position I'm in. I mean, yeah, I put in the work, and that was a big part of it, but he gave me the opportunities. He opened doors for me and allowed me to walk through them, right? So
Hmm.
big thanks to him, really.
Well, it sounds like he's a wonderful employer, and more employers should be like-minded, to allow people to grow, give them the space they need when they need it, right?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah,
All right. Well, thank you very much, Alicia, for being on the show. I really have enjoyed having you on.
yeah, me as well. Thank you.
And to all the listeners that have been following along, thank you so much for making the show such a success. We have passed 25,000 downloads. We're doing really, really well, and it can't be without the help of all the listeners and, of course, all my wonderful guests. Please keep downloading and sharing the content, and please comment. I need comments in the comment sections of it doesn't matter where you're listening to it, if it's on Google, Apple, Spotify, it doesn't matter. Put stuff in the comment sections. That's how I know you are engaged, and let me know what you think, what we could do better, or if you have any ideas of people that you would love to see on the show, shoot them my way. I'm always looking. So thank you very much, and I'll catch you at the next one.
We hope you enjoyed the show.